Hi, I'm Morven, and today on Not Serious Wine Chats, Pete, John and I had the pleasure of sharing a glass or two with an English/Kiwi/Aussie winemaker now living and making wine in the Republic of Georgia. Aidan Raftery hasn't had formal training in winemaking, but it seems wine has always featured somehow in some way in his life. Born in the UK, he arrived in Aotearoa with his family as a young chap. Serendipity would have it that the family home was perched just around the corner from some wine writer, master of wine guy called Bob Campbell. With a curiosity of industrial proportions, Aidan took any opportunity to learn about wine from the neighbour and his folks, and to be honest, anyone else who would engage in wine chats. Fast forward a few years and a need to leave our small island in the pursuit of more adventure, and we follow Aidan's journey to Melbourne, where he established one of the first natural wine bars in the city and began to get his hands truly dirty with grape stain. It was here he gave winemaking a crack for the first time and fell even further into his own personal, very deep wine cave. Aidan's vim and vigour for learning, for making, for tasting and trying, for sharing and for caring about wine is bloody infectious. It's also given him something of an enviable, intrepid urge to follow his nose when it comes to wine adventures, and nowhere says wine adventure more than Georgia, where the winemaking history is so deep and so rich, it's UNESCO protected. If you think amphora and clay eggs are a new thing, you're about 6,000 years out of touch. It's in this unexpected but fascinating part of the world that Aidan has really put down his winemaking roots. Chatting with this guy and drinking his wine is like being teleported to an utterly unknown terra firma. Grape varieties we've never heard of, inflections on words that felt so unfamiliar and so super hard to pronounce it was confusing, were all wrapped up in cultural traditions from a whole other time. This is one special chat with one special chap. So put on your choker, put down your panduri, so you can pick up a glass and line up by the quivery. This is the Not Serious Aidan Raftery chat. Hi to my Aidan. Welcome to By the Bottle. This is our very first podcast actually on site in the store. We had the
privilege to be there.
I know, welcome. Guest number one here. We had some very generous support from Renee and Stephen at Coco's Cantina for the last few, so we were upstairs in a restaurant, which was also felt very fitting, but I've got to say it's pretty nice to be sitting in the bottle store where you can actually buy half of what we're talking about. Yeah, which is pretty nice.
Very nice.
But so welcome to Aotearoa, back to Aotearoa.
Yes, thank you.
So you're from New Zealand originally?
No, complicated. From England originally.
Jesus.
So born and raised in Camden, and then we were sort of young-ish kids. We moved to New Zealand. My parents wanted to get out of the humdrum of Camden, but I, as a sort of early teenager, didn't gel with New Zealand lifestyle so much. You know, coming from Camden, where 3 million people lived in our suburb, to a country of 3 million was a bit of a culture shock. Yeah. So I ended up moving to Melbourne when I was 20. So I was there for 16 years and then moved to Georgia.
Right, because Melbourne's definitely where I first came across you. Obviously, Emily Raftery, your sister, who's a fantastic photographer and a dear friend of mine, she had been telling me about you too, but I understand it, and I hope I've got this right. Were you on one of the Not Serious Wine Chats panels in Australia?
Yeah, 2018. Yeah. So we did I think it was the first one they did or the second one they did on natural wine, because I opened like the first natural wine bar in Melbourne back in 2010. Right. So she invited me to come on board to sort of talk with a natural wine importer, and then we had like quite a conventional winemaker. It was sort of, so we had all covers, on a nice panel, which is nice. I
mean, the history of winemaking in Georgia, the journey for you to get
the history of wine, essentially.
I mean, UNESCO, it's correct, tradition of the Georgian style of winemaking is now listed under UNESCO. Correct. Yeah. I mean, which is insane.
Yeah. Quiveries, UNESCO protected now. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, which is as it should be. Like, what an incredible. I just actually included it in the last article I wrote about sort of when we started drinking booze. Yeah. And it was like 7,000 BC, I think, was recorded.
6,000 BC, 8,000 years. 8,000 years in Georgia.
Insane.
Yeah.
So why don't we backtrack and
all the way to 8,000 years?
Well, John, that's it's I'll have to edit quite a lot. There might be a bit too much
But the
editing.
factual part is like they discovered, like, I don't know if you guys are familiar with, they discovered a qvevri in just outside of Tbilisi. It's about an hour and a half outside of Tbilisi, and it was carbon dated to 6,000 BC, so 8,000 years old. But what made it proof was that it had seeds of Vitis vinifera, so therefore it was actually proved that it was a grape being cultivated for the production of wine rather than a wild grape. So this was showing that it was actual cultivation happening in Georgia, and it was tartrate crystals and stuff in there as well. So it's proof that it was wine and proof that it was 8,000 years of unbroken history. Yeah,
incredible. Cool. And so before we get too far down the track, I think we should probably taste the wine. And if you could tell us a little bit about what we're tasting, because it looks pretty delicious in the glass, I have to say. Beautiful colour.
So so basically I have like two labels. So one is Aotearoa, which is this one here. So Aotearoa is basically our home vineyard and the one we look after. And then we have another tier of wines called Igavi wines, which are basically grower project wines. But this one here, so Aotearoa is an old vineyard from 1954, planted to about 85% Solikori, which is most planted white grape in Western Georgia. But confusingly, Solikori has two varieties of Solikori, not clonal, but literally two different varieties. One is Solikori Melko, which is like a golden colored Solikori when it ripens. And the other is Solikori Basaletti, which is like a green colored grape even when it's ripe. And where we are in Imereti in Western Georgia, it's traditionally planted together about 50-50. And when you harvest at the same time, as you can imagine by colors, the gold has more sugar and the green has more acid. So they come together, you get a little bit more opulence, but then you get this sort of really lovely line of acid from the green. So we have
this green.
So this is a combination of the two.
Oh, amazing.
But we pick a little bit earlier than a lot of guys in Western Georgia. So there's that. There's 10% of another grape called Tsitska. And Tsitska's sort of like the sparkling grape of Western Georgia. So very high acid, sort of very light on in flavor profile. And then it's has 5% of a red grape called Vanis Chichaveri, which is extremely rare.
I feel like this is going to take quite a lot for me to write.
Yeah, when you see them written down, exactly.
It's like, jeepers, there's quite a lot I've never heard of before happening.
And there's
in this
a lot of
conversation.
because the language is phonetic, so there's a lot of consonants in a row. So you just sort of have to like rush through consonants as fast as you can until you get to a vowel. That's actually how the language works.
Right.
But anyway, so it's a very rare red grape from where we are in Imereti. The village is called, the region's called Vani. And so it's basically Chichaveri from Vani. So it's only from this region. It's so rare. I mean, we talk to so many people in our region and no one's even heard of the grape. And there's only one other producer making this variety.
Amazing.
But anyway, this is a white wine, as you can see, but you can't see.
Yeah.
And so, we sort of pick everything together, just whole bunch pressed into old wood, then just let floor develop. We don't top the barrels and just leave like a light floor, but not heavily oxidative, as you can see. And we just sort of leave it to just gently evaporate, just very gently pick up a floor for 9 months, and then straight to bottle, no filtering, fining, no sulfites ever. And we don't use sulfites even for cleaning. We just use ozone, water, and that's it.
Yeah, it's delicious.
It is delicious.
I've got to say, you sound like a bit of a pro with the language. How long have you actually been there?
I've been living there 5 years. I think I do okay. If I'm talking about food and wine and renovations, I've got it covered. But once the conversation gets outside of that at a table, I'm just get a bit lost. But I can get by in the village and, get shopping around. But it's funny, I had to do a TV show on there. And of course, it has to be in Georgian. So I sort of did my best Georgian and I gave my sort of thing. And it was funny, a friend of mine came to visit from Melbourne. And as soon as he got off the plane, he just was laughing. And he's like, man, I saw that thing you did on TV. I don't speak the language, but I knew you were cocking that up. He was like, I could see your wife looking at you. You were horrendous.
Classic.
That's what friends are for.
So
that's right.
Why Georgia?
So good question. So basically, I visited the first time in 2017. And it was sort of two-pronged. I was interested, obviously, being the homeland of wine. So that was obviously sparked an interest. And I'd sold a lot of Georgian wine through the shop. So I knew very little about it other than what the importer was telling me. And so when I sold the bar, I actually went to work with this importer. And so he said, why don't you come to Georgia for the buying trip? And we'll go and you can get a bit more of a handle on the country. And then it was his stupid mistake, because then I loved it so much I decided to move there. But yeah, I visited a couple of times over the next couple of years and just like absolutely fell in love with like everything about it. Food's amazing, wine's amazing, culture in food and wine is amazing, but also like a country with so much history. And just in terms of like nature, it's like it's super beautiful but compact. So you know, like if you compare it to example to New Zealand, which is also super beautiful because I grew up here for some time, but it's super beautiful but very expensive. You know, you can drive for a long time where it's just rolling sort of paddocky hills, but then you can duck into somewhere to find a nook of something beautiful. But in Georgia, you can drive from one end to the other in 7 hours, the whole country. And in that you'll have skiing, you've got amazing swimming on the Black Sea, you've got ancient cave towns, you've got, you know, deserts, you've got subtropical forests. It's like a very vast and sort of varied landscape. So so that was pretty much it. And then I just was trying to think I was like, I could live there, but what the fuck am I going to do in Georgia? I don't speak the language. Like I don't know anyone. Like how would I live there? So the original idea was actually, I was trying to think what to do post-bar and what to invest some money and do something like this.
Can I just interrupt? Did you meet making wine when you were in Melbourne?
Yes. So backtrack to that. So basically when I opened the bar, so this is 2010, and we were opening in East Melbourne, which is a very sort of conservative, very asset-rich, cash-poor suburb. Sorry to East Melbourneites listening, but true. And we were opening in 2010 when, you know, this natural wine had just started, 2007, the natural selection theory guys started. So it was sort of, people had sort of heard about it. It was sort of happening. People would start dabbling and you'd find a couple here and there. But philosophically, I really believed in it. And it was very exciting the first time we tried it in probably 2007. And just, you know, when you've tasted wines, you know, I've worked in wines since I was 20, but you sort of, suddenly something shocks you that's new, you know, and you don't often see new. You know, it was exciting when you see Greek wine because it's so different, or like Canary Islands wines, it's so different. But there's like little spots of excitement. And then this was just like this wave of excitement. Anyway, so basically, when I was opening this bar, in terms of on paper, it looked like commercial suicide. I was opening in an affluent suburb with horrendous rent. I was opening in a very conservative area. Natural wine was starting to get very expensive. All the local guys were selling quite cheap when they started, but they were established, so the prices were not expensive, but realistically, at that time, you'd be looking
reflective of production.
Yeah, exactly. And cost of organic farming was quite expensive in Australia, and you know, no matter what anyone tells you in Australia at that time, the spend was $20 to $25 a bottle. That's what people spent on a bottle to take away. And that just was not available in natural wine. And so it was actually a late night conversation with a friend of mine, Pat Sullivan. And he was like, you know, how long have you been like working vintages and helping out in wineries and everything? He's like, why don't you just make one for the shop? And it was just sort of like, oh, that's a good idea. A pretty basic idea is that. So the very first year, which was 2010, we took some bottles up from my cellar to Hanging Rock and swapped a box of wine for a couple of 100 kilos of Pinot Noir, which they were bringing in, which they didn't tell their father about. It was Josh Cooper was working there at the time. He was on the forklift, and we just nabbed the grapes off the back and threw them in the back of the car. And fermented it in a fish bowl, pressed it through my wife's pillowcase. We didn't have any equipment, and it was just in the garage. And that was how it started. And,
I love it.
And it was sort of, because we were making something, you know, very like a very basic raw product. It was sort of, I suppose it worked quite well in terms of its own marketing, because we set up the shop that we had wine by the tumbler and then wine by the glass. And so wine by the tumbler, we just served it in like a latte glass. And that was the wine I made, because I said, oh, look, I'm not trying to pretend what I did was anything close to what these guys that I admire and who we buy and put on the list. But if you're interested to see what this is about, you know, this is like a toe in the water. And so it sort of had a bit of a runaway success, because like Alice Fearing tried it when she came for Rootstock and said it was like amazing. And then Pat Norse was like, this is the best dollar for dollar, best drinking you can have in wine. And all this sort of crazy, stupid things happen. Yeah, it was stupid, but cool. And so that was it. So I just made it in my garage in Preston for the years while I had the bar. And I loved it. And so it was sort of a little passion project, but never a business. And to get into the business there, you know, I just probably wouldn't have ever had the opportunity I did have as I did in Georgia.
And is that a cultural thing, do you think? Because this sort of feels like, I guess, the wine industry feels very established and sort of, you know, kind of classic in Australia, right, overall. So because, I guess, of the history of Georgia, where it is much more
I
earthen
think,
kind of, if that's the right way to put it. Is that
yeah,
the
I
right
would
way
say,
to put it?
I'd say that's correct because, I mean, yeah, like what I was impressed with in Australia is that it's an incredibly educated wine drinking country. Like the consumer was really well educated with region and variety and this sort of thing, but it was classic and it was kind of dictated by media. So if things were spoken about as interesting, people would sort of follow those trends. But in Georgia, like, you know, people say it, you've probably heard it said, but it's so true. Like winemaking is a part of the cult, like everyday life. I've been to breakfast in a guest house at 8 a.m. and out comes a liter of wine that she's made herself. And I've been to tastings in Tbilisi where everyone's basement in Tbilisi is a winery in your apartments.
It's part
and
of the house, isn't it?
Huh? Yeah.
Part of the
Absolutely.
house having Kiev in there.
Everyone has wine. Everyone makes wine. Everyone has their own wine that they drink. You know, it's absolute. It's just everywhere. You walk in the streets and you have like grapevines growing in the middle of the city. It's just like, and they're making wine from it. It's just wine is everywhere. And so that sort of really, I don't know, it just attracted me. It was just so.
It's interesting that too, isn't it? I
raw.
often sort of think that's one of the issues that the New Zealand wine industry has to slightly. It's one of the challenges because the New Zealanders, we've done our travel because you have to. You can't travel for a week if you're going to travel somewhere.
Yeah, you got to make a good crack of it.
Yeah, you're over there for a couple of years, and so you get used to all these amazing things that you've got exposure to. All of a sudden, you come home and you want them here. So we've done that. We've kind of started to make wine. We're good with coffee. We're making our own cheeses. Like we're doing some incredible things. But I think that gap between understanding how it's made, the agriculture and the farming and the manufacture of it is actually not really seen by most of us. And I think that's where, you know, and I can imagine the romance of that, if that's the right way to put it. It's probably not even romance, just the basic understanding of where wine comes from, how wine is made, the effort that's required, all that stuff is
and
just
it's also
already
part
innate.
of the day-to-day existence. You know, you don't have a meal without a glass of wine.
Yeah.
Whereas here, that's
Yeah.
kind of relegated for a certain demographic to have a wine with every meal, right?
Yeah.
Or it's sort of, you know, so it's kind of nice seeing the new wave that's happening here that's trying to make it, you know, but at the same time, I guess the costs and, you know, there's when you look at all these new wave producers, you look at their price points are not unachievable, but they're, you know, it's an investment to a lot of people. And when you're in Georgia, like wine's never an investment. You know, you just go to someone's house and liters are coming out for you to drink. It's just, it's a real, you know, and
It's for everyone.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas we've sort of developed this thing that wine is this aspirational thing that you kind of, the more you spend on wine, the sort of more you seem to know about it, you know.
Absolutely.
Whereas it sounds great that
And if
it's
it says
just
reserve
so,
on it, it's better for this reason.
Yeah.
We should buy that and we'll show it off when we take it out for dinner. And that sort of, it's like, I think it's a global thing when you have countries that don't have it like as part of their everyday, because you look at France or you look at Italy, you look at Greece, these sort
That's
of
right.
older cultures are making wine. It's a part of it. You know, you go out for lunch, you have a glass of wine. You don't need to get drunk, but you go out and have a glass of wine. You know, it's just normal. One meal, one glass of wine, everything. It's just a part of it. And when you have places like Australia and New Zealand, just as close examples, because I lived in both, you know, they're a place that's not been a part of it. It's probably more of a beer drinking culture because of it's a working kind of place, you know? And I think, this is, I suppose, one of the things that attracted me a lot to Georgia.
And so from sort of, I mean, so when you say started in wine at the age of 20, so have you done any sort of formal training? Like it's just all been on the ground,
Yep.
you know, as you run kind of, you know, on the run learning?
Absolutely, yeah.
Love
So
it,
Dad was
love it.
always a collector. Like Dad's always had a cellar. So we were sort of exposed to it early on, but never really that interested in it. And then where my family moved to in Devonport, we were actually just like 2 doors up from Bob Campbell.
Yeah.
And so he was a bit of influence early on because he would have a lot of these big tastings for cuisine and these sort of magazines.
Yeah.
And so he had loads and loads of wine and they would just bring it up to us and sort of walk me through it if I needed to.
What
So
a
that
great
was sort of
neighbour.
kind of thing. Yeah,
Yeah, handy.
It was a pretty great neighbour. Yeah, it was just like,
New Zealand's-
here's
New
40
Zealand's
Sauvignon
first.
Blancs.
Yeah.
Isn't that great? But, you know, so it was interesting because you'd say something and something would be different and I could just pop down the road and go, hey, what was the story with this? You know, like something jumped
that's
out.
great.
You know? That was a really great resource. And so that sort of
You're
started
obviously
the spike.
curious though, right?
Yeah,
There's obviously
absolutely.
an energy and curiosity in you for the industry, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's
Which is
very
cool. Yeah,
captured it well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Curious. I'm very curious.
Yeah.
So I've forgotten the
So
question.
no formal training, but just kind of picking things up as
so
you go.
exactly no formal, and then on the spot, just everything training from winemakers we talked to or sommeliers or anything. It was always just that. But I suppose you guys will know, working in hospital as well, like you get a resume, and if you have someone who's formally trained in hospitality for 5 years and someone that's worked 6 months on the floor, I'll take that 6 month kid any day over that 5 years.
It's funny,
because it's like,
yeah.
this, you can't teach someone to be hospitable. They either have it or they don't. I can teach you to carry a plate and pour a wine, but I can't teach you to be hospitable.
Yeah, that's right.
That's why you kind of only have it. But and I suppose that's it a little bit. I suppose with winemaking, I suppose we've come to it a bit different. And there's a lot of guys, and I think probably the same here in New Zealand, but in Melbourne it was big as well. A lot of sommeliers would sort of move into winemaking because, they're so curious, so passionate about it as a thing. They kind of are interested to take it to the next level. And I think these style of winemakers bring a really interesting, different outlook, because you have the not really three, but you kind of can break it down to three. You have the ones who are like, it's been in their family all their life and it's generation after generation after generation. And so there's always kind of like a learning and understanding of where they're from, but then each new generation just wants to put their fingerprint onto it, right? That's one style. Then you have this like formally trained thing where there's almost the sameness in production, because they all go to Roseworthy and they all learn that this is how you make wine, which is a big thing I think in New Zealand, and you all learn that you must do this and must do this and must do this, and all, otherwise you get problems. And that's something that's important, that's education. But they're taught that to work without preservatives or to work like this is impossible, and that's definitely not the case. I mean, it is absolutely difficult, of course. There's I don't think there's a person in the world that denies that. But then you have those, and then you have this kind of other generation that come to it with a new outlook, with no formal training other than tasting, for example. So all my training, so if you taste something, you go, why is it like that? And someone says, because we we did this and we worked with this wood and we worked with this clay and we did that and we stirred, and these kind of form a part of your Rolodex, right? Because it's all just flavors and smells that are a part of what's inside you, and you just roll back to them. So the same thing, you're like, I loved what happened to the palate when this happened. And so then you kind of take those ideas and you put them into your winemaking. And that's just coming from like a database that sits inside your head, a tasting database, rather than formally educated, rather than hands down. So it's kind of a different
It's sort of like
way.
Having the curiosity still in the first place, I think, because, and it sounds like it's coming from a place of asking a question as opposed to just being told the answer. So you're probably building better memory for everything that way.
And also too, don't you reckon, because you're naturally curious, like I've listened to you talk just then, it's like, see, how do you get someone who's intimidated by wine and doesn't really know what question to ask in the first place to broaden their exposure to more wine producers, do you reckon? Because, your personality clearly opened the door before you learnt more and more about wine.
Yeah.
Because Bob Campbell wouldn't have put a natural wine in front of you, I was saying.
No, absolutely not.
So therefore, kind of having that kind of curiosity and having that kind of interest in flavour and that, I mean, there's a lot of cerebral things happening to you clearly when you experience wine. And I think that's almost the point of why we're having this chat is, I mean, I adore that. That's what wine's so great for. It's just, in its very essence, it just has to be delicious and yummy. And secondly, it just has to make sure that everybody around the table's having a great night. Like let's put wine in its place.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it can be so glorious about what it teaches you. Like everything you just explained about what's in this beautiful bottle of wine that we're drinking is language I've never bloody heard before in my life, but how incredibly fucking fascinating. And suddenly I'm intrigued. And also as a complete font nerd, I really want to drink what's in it because the outside of this bottle looks so cool. Yeah. I mean, that font is, it's...
Yeah, I'm a font nerd too.
It just looks so cool.
A friend of mine's an Italian designer and we spent ages getting that font right. It was like...
Yeah, Yeah. Really nailed it. It just looks so cool. So it's sort of like, God, I'm just so... eager.
And for me, that is always like, it's always dipping your toe into a culture, like, and especially with like what we're talking about today, it's a culture that I don't really have a huge amount of experience in, but I think that's what is great about it.
No, absolutely. And I think it's how do we what's the conduit that takes that kind of curiosity that you've naturally got and helps us share that more with more people, do you reckon?
I think honestly, it's like getting those, and I'm not saying me, but getting those people that can, because I think if you look at you guys, if you were tasting with a winemaker, right? And if they have some sort of infectious passion, it rubs off on you, and you go back and you go, I have to buy that person's wine. But not only that, I have to communicate their story because it excited me. And I think if you put excited people in front of people, it helps. I'm not saying I need to be put in front of many people, but there's this sense, if someone stands to you and talks very serious and states a lot of facts without maybe the passion and the love for what they're talking about, you can drift. It's the same as going to school. If someone's teaching you maths, it can be incredibly dull, but if you have a maths teacher who's super enigmatic, you will take to it a little bit better. And I think that's probably the best thing if, and these wine festivals, I think, are a great sort of thing for this, where you have rooms full of winemakers, right? And you have young people who are like interested in what's this new thing happening with wine. They don't really drink wine. They drink RTDs and beers and this sort of stuff, right? And then they come and they see these infectious people that are talking about wine that they've never heard people talk about wine. They won't remember anything they heard, but they'll take away an emotion from that. Yeah. And they'll be like, wow, like I want to be a part of that. That
they'll
was
remember
pretty cool.
A personality.
Yeah. I want to be a part of that. And I think that's kind of a big part of what we should do as winemakers.
So maybe the trickiest customer then, it would be not so much the person that's drinking RTDs and beers and getting there, because I think that's one thing the natural wine world does really well, is it sort of invites those guys over to the wine side to have a crack. But I think our hardest customer is actually the 50-year-old Pinot Noir drinker who wants everything to be, or it can't be cloudy because it's got to look really clean, and maybe they've had a couple of bad experiences with natural wines that, because I think, you said it before with Georgia, everyone has a wine. It's all, they all have it in their houses. So it's extremely local.
Yeah.
There is no exporting. There's no, clearly.
Minimal,
Yeah. So when you're drinking it on site like that, that sort of variation, some of that natural wine issue that we have, or that I guess is kind of part of the, what's the right word for that? Yeah, and sort of part of the stigma that's probably that it's carrying a little bit at the moment is one or two people have a bad experience and then don't go any further with it and miss out on some beautiful things. Yeah. And because actually quite genuinely they didn't have a great first experience, so they go back to the real classics, which is like, I think that is matching the personality. Like if they find someone who's passionate as you are and is excited, they might sit here and before they know it, they've finished the glass of wine you made going, oh my God.
I see the merit, or I see where they're coming from. Or
Yeah.
I think you nailed it here, because that is without doubt, that little bit of knowledge can be a complicated thing. So it's without a doubt, if you're doing something outside of the norm, as it were, I suppose, if the wine's a little bit cloudy or you're working without, but then you approach someone who's read Gourmet Traveller wine, and they've subscribed for the last 5 years, so they know everything. When you talk to them, it can be a little confronting, but I think then that comes down to like us as communicators, or me as a communicator, to be aware of where they've come from and know that if I go in there dogmatic about this is the way, we are going to clash, and it's going to be a pointless thing where we're just going to argue for a while and agree to disagree. Whereas if we go in it with a different approach and we just say, yes, I also read these magazines. I also brought up like this. I also collected like this. I also trained like this. But then I discovered something that I found interesting, and it's a bit more subtle in its approach rather than hit with a hammer. I think this will make it easier. But
that's some hospitality diplomacy.
Yeah, that's right. Well. And also a super communicator. I just listened to a podcast on this driving from Raglan to Auckland this morning. And they were talking about super communication and super communicators, and often they ask the person who's disagreeing with them that they don't sort of hit them with, well, this is what I think and that's what you think, so we're different. It's kind of like, what can you explain why you think that? And that's often they start with the why. So it's kind of like, why do those wines? Why don't you want to try natural wine? Why do those wines float your boat and these ones don't? And it's just just exactly what you've just said, is that sort of changing the approach of how the conversation is had, right? Yeah. And giving people an opportunity and a platform, a place where they feel comfortable to ask the questions. I mean, that was what Dom did so well, and Tom and Penny, when they set up Not Serious Wine Chats in Melbourne, was, we would plant people in the audience who had really dumb questions, and we would get them to put their hand up and ask a really dumb question, just to initiate a sort of a general feeling in the room, like, oh, thank fucking God, because I've been wanting to answer that question for a really long time, but I have not got the balls, and having that place to feel comfortable to be a bit of a dunce.
Yeah.
That's not intimidating.
Yeah.
Speaking of intimidating,
Where are
the
you going,
decision to move to Georgia, a place where you don't know the language, you haven't had a sort of formal winemaking career as such. Georgia is not, moving to the Barossa Valley or something. I'm anxious in hindsight for you.
Yeah, totally.
It'd be interesting to know about.
Yeah, it was
a
complete gamble. So I think I started on that, but then I got on a tangent and lost where I was going. So the original idea with Georgia was that I was thinking post-sale what to do, invest, and I was thinking to buy a small apartment in Tbilisi, and just because like the price per square meter in Tbilisi was very cheap, the rental return was very high, and the occupancy rate with Airbnb was extremely high, one of the highest in the world. So this is pre-pandemic, right? And I was thinking, well, actually, that would be great if I bought an apartment. There's a little money income coming through. Passive income, and then I have a place I can have a holiday home where I can visit as many times a year as I want because the flights weren't too expensive back then. And this was that was the plan. And so that was the first idea. And then, as it so often happens, I went to a wine festival and I saw a very beautiful woman walk past.
Classic.
Yeah, and she's now my wife. So
Go figure.
Yeah, go figure. So that was also a second part of the decision to move, for sure. But yeah, I mean that was one person knowing the country and still no language knowing and no idea. And at that time, it wasn't to go over to start a winery either. It was just like I knew that I kind of felt like my time in Melbourne was done. I kind of have this thing, that's why our thing's called Vintners and Vagabonds. Like I have this transient nature where I've been in London and then I was in New Zealand and then in Australia, and I kind of felt like that was next thing was ready for me. And so it was seriously just a one night, not even drunk. It was just a one night. I was just like, you know what? No, fuck it, I'm going. That's it. And so I sold house, sold up everything in Australia, and I left with a suitcase.
Crazy.
And that was it.
Yeah,
and then
really
at the
crazy.
time I was still thinking, when I got there, I was like, maybe I should open a wine bar. I knew that much more than I knew a wine industry. The winery was my garage, it was not a winery. I still don't have a winery. I have a shed now, or 2 sheds. I've just expanded. But anyway, it's not a winery by any sense, but it's sort of, I knew this, wine bar business more, and it was I knew that would be easier, but I just knew it didn't give me as much joy as what I had making wine on the side. And luckily, because then it was pandemic, and if I'd opened a bar just before pandemic, I probably wouldn't be here today. Well, we certainly wouldn't be here today chatting.
Yeah. Incredible.
Yeah, and so then I ended up looking around this region of Imereti in Western Georgia, it was home to my favorite. Maybe it's still not my favorite now, but it's in the top 3 probably still. But at the time when I moved there, my favorite grape, which was called Aladasturi. And it was said that this region, Vani, was where the best Aladasturi came from in terms of historicalness, but 0 producers were making it there. So we were looking for a property there. And then we found this old house with a shed to make wine and an old vineyard, and that was it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. You kind of described it quite well too when you said this thing is called Vintners and Vagabonds, because you've got a few strings to your bow with this thing, don't you? It's not just a wine brand. We're talking exporting.
Well, it's side hustles because we started this wine brand or winery from nothing. So the term Katsida Gunaba, what it means in Georgian is a man and a mood, but it's an idiom that's used to translate basically that every person believes what they are doing is the right way. So it's a kind of like a let's agree to disagree kind of term in Georgian.
Oh God,
and so
it's perfect for the natural wine movement.
Yeah, even more perfect for where we were, because so we had this old vineyard and we were pruning it right back, and they were like, what are you doing? You're not going to get any yield off this. And we're like, no, we don't care. This old vineyard, we just want to really concentrate it and small. And they're like, like this, idiot.
Yeah.
Then we were like, we're turning the old cow shed into the winery, and it's 16 square meter shed. I mean, it's not, that's what I'm saying, it's not a winery, but we were turning that into the wine cellar, and they were like, what? You can't turn a cow shed? Because in Georgia, the Marani, which is the winery, is holy. It's holy. And for a very long time, it was so holy that it was only men could set foot, women weren't even allowed in, and woman winemaker, absolutely not. And when the first one, which was a very famous winemaker called Iago Bitriashvili, and his wines are in New Zealand as well, Iago's wine. He encouraged his wife to make wine, and they got threatened by the patriarch to burn his winery to the ground because there was a woman in there. Yeah,
no
it's
way.
like crazy. It's a very holy thing, but very historical, 8,000 years, da-da-da. Anyway, so they were saying to me, you're going to do that where a cow slept and shat? Like, not on your life. That is terrible. And they were like, how are you going to even bury the queveries in the ground? And I was like, oh, no, we're not going to bury them. And they were like, oh my God, you're going to quevery. So everything we were doing, they were just like, this guy is crazy. And so when I even made the wine, I had no idea what to call it. I was like, I just couldn't think of it. I was like trying to think of like my Irish heritage and translate it into Georgian and translating words, and everything was a mess, and I just couldn't get anything to work. And then I just found this like online and this idiom one day, and I was just like, oh my God, it's like perfect what that is.
That's all right. We just got a few sound effects in the store.
Yeah.
Is that the FPOS machine turning off for the night?
Yeah.
It doesn't
like working the whole day.
I mean, fair enough. I can totally relate.
Yeah.
And so that was how that came about with the name. It just sort of seemed so perfect. It just summed up everything about what we were doing, which was, what the...
And so the side hustles include exporting how does it say it again?
So Quevri.
Quevri.
Yep. So we basically help winemakers at the moment with France, South Africa, Australia, Taiwan, and Lebanon at the moment.
And so explain a little bit about the Quevri and its sort of specifics, what's so... unique, yeah. And what sort of you can spot a Quevri when you see it.
Okay. So basically, the thing is, people often compare Quevri as like amphora. It's probably the easiest one people can say. It's a more common word, but it's like tinaha or talha or any of these other Portuguese and Spanish versions of. But the Quevri, whereas for example, amphora would have handles and it was movable, and it was also used to store olive oil or grain or anything, wine, anything it was. Quevri has only ever been made for its entire life for the production of wine. That's it. Mm-hmm. And as tradition, Quevris are always buried underground. Mm-hmm. And it's sort of a twofold. Philosophically and poetically, it's believed that Mother Nature and Earth gives birth to the vine, which gives birth to the grapes, which when then harvested, we put back into the ground for them to be birthed from grape to wine. Mm-hmm. And it's a sort of circle of life kind of philosophy.
That's pretty cool.
And it's
quite
shaped like a womb.
Feminine.
Yeah, it is. And it's also shaped like a womb, they say. And so basically it's in there for 9 months with its mother before you pull it up. And so it's a 9-month process before the wine is birthed back. Mm-hmm. So it sort of has that sort of philosophical side. But from a scientific side, you have this notion of being underground. You keep temperatures cooler, which for fermentation in warmer regions is fantastic. But where we are, it's very cold. That's why ours are above. And then also in the area, which is in the east, where they do this is Kaheti. And that's where they make these heavy maceration. And so the traditional is skins and stems, so everything in. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like the best way to describe it is if you've ever made like a consomme from a stock, and basically you put the protein in and you make that raft, and you just keep it at the same temperature, and that sort of ionizes all the other proteins and it just clarifies your stock. That's what happens in the Quevri over the period. So you need to keep it at the same temperature. So that's why underground through winter helps. And what that does is because the skins and stems and seeds are all full of protein, as they sort of sink through the Quevri very, very slowly, all the proteins are ionizing as they go down. And so you have, when you open it, absolutely crystal clear, like impeccably clear, as if it had been filtered. And that's this natural filtration that happens in the Quevri with this style.
Amazing.
But we work in Western Georgia where we don't use that heavy maceration. So ours, as you can see, are much lighter. But so we keep them above ground for the purpose that they can get very cold in winter. We can open up the cellar and let like icy cold wind come through, just get sort of cold stabilization that way.
Yeah, nice.
But yeah, so that's what a Quevri is. And
shape-wise, are they very much like an amphora?
No, more bulbous.
Yeah, right.
They're much more bulbous, even more so. Every hand has a different shape a little bit. There was for some period only like 3 masters left in the country, and it was almost thanks to the natural wine scene that they suddenly boomed, because everyone was sort of moving away. No one, the kids didn't want us to continue on this tradition. Like, why don't I make clay pots? Like, screw that. It's like an old thing, So everyone was moving out of the country, and then kind of thanks to the natural wine scene who were coming, kind of bringing back this. There's now, I think, 28 makers in the country as well, but they vary immensely when you look at their hands, because it's still, everything's made by hand. They're all like, and nothing's on a wheel. It's literally
and all clay.
Incredible.
All Georgian clay.
All Georgian clay.
Yeah.
So there was a very interesting study that was done by a German, by GIZ, and they looked at like Italian amphora, and they looked at Talha from Portugal and Tinaja from Spain and Qvevri, and they compared them all, made wine and did all these sort of things to them. And it was sort of the takeaway at its loosest form was that the clay in Georgia was unequivocally the best out of any country that was making clay vessels. I mean, it's a very narrow test, so this isn't factual by any means, but that's what the test gave. However, the quality of the Qvevri production was the worst in the world.
All right,
Wow.
that's interesting.
Yeah, because it's a very beautiful thing to watch. Like it's a handmade product.
Is
where
it
they
like
could,
a coil? So they coil
a
the
layer-
bacon?
yeah. So
yeah.
they have like little sort of like logs that they then mold, and they make 10 centimeters a day is all they can work, and then not even every day, so 10 centimeters at a time.
Yeah.
And then they just sort of keep the top wet with plastic so it doesn't dry out for connecting, but it needs to dry enough that they can build another. Because some of them, they only work to 2,000 liters now, but still 2 tons of clay.
Oh, wow.
So it's a big vessel.
Totally.
But yeah, they make it all by hand, and then when it's fired, it's just literally a huge room, probably the size of this shop, in brick, and they just bring them all in, and then they just seal up with the wall, and then they just have fire outside, literally just wood fire. So masters know their temperature by feel,
Insane,
but it's
yeah.
still, if you're talking to a ceramicist, there's no vitrification or anything like that in the clay. So they all nowadays are all beeswax lined, which is not uncommon to Georgia. There's a few countries that are the same.
And in my this great water that we're drinking, Antipodes Water Company, still water that we're drinking next to a lovely wine. My background with these guys, I would often do a tasting using the Borjami water from Georgia and the tasting, and it was a huge variation in its mineral content. Like it was
it's viscous and salty, and
the saltiness of it was outstanding, and I mean it was a powerful water. So I'm assuming then that the terroir, the soils, I mean if that's the sort of the aquifer infrastructure of a water source, then I'm assuming that must be. I mean, is that imparted into the clay too? That real sort of.
I would say so,
salty?
because there's for example, like if you go. Like we have a well on our property, and everyone has well. There's no water supply in the villages where we are. Everyone's on a well, but all of our water supplies are salty. So there's like salty and sulfurous, and so the water underneath all of us is incredibly mineral rich.
Yeah.
So I think that would have a huge impact on cultivation for sure, like in terms of vines, but then I would say also on clay, I wouldn't be surprised as well, because the mineral content in the clay was extremely high. That's what they were saying, it was so rich in minerals.
And it's interesting that too, I remember having a chat to Stephen Wong about transference of mineral content through the vine as well, because that's sort of something that I mean the terroir is so the soil structure and how that obviously ends up giving an impression on the end wine, but are the minerals actually translated through a vine? Does a vine have that ability to actually properly almost sort of absorb those minerals and throw those minerals into the grape? So that in itself will, together with whatever has come through that vine, absolutely tells that same story. I mean, it's why actually when we were talking to Rosie Finn, and they've just started doing Rosie's block with an amphora, and they've got they're sort of very well known for their clay soils, and she's sort of desperate to see how they could get a few amphora made from local clay soils, and it makes complete sense because that's the expression of the wine. That's how it tells the story of place, which I mean Georgia's just going back to that water, when I used to taste that with hospitality, young wait staff who I was training with either water or wine, and getting them to understand what a mineral water even was. Because we're still having that conversation here because we're all on municipal water supply, not this beautiful well out the back, and it used to just like, what do you mean? That's natural? And it's like, yeah, that comes out of the ground naturally.
It's the hangover cure of Georgia. That's what everyone gets, and you can buy it in like those Red Bull cans.
Oh yeah,
and
classic.
you see like when people walk out of clubs, they'll just like buy a couple of cans and stick in their back pocket for like the morning.
If people keep bringing liters of wine out at breakfast time, no fucking wonder you need some Bourjami.
But the first time we went there, I remember, and they were like, "Oh, you need this," because it was a big day of drinking. They said, "You'll need this for the morning."
Oh, yeah.
And we were all left it on the bus that we had, like a tour bus we were on. And so the next morning we were horrendously hungover, and everyone on the bus was like, "Oh God, where's that water they told us about? This magic water." And you guys probably never tried Bourjami, but it's something you do not drink warm. You drink it as icy cold as possible, so it's palatable. So we cracked open these bottles, and it is seriously, it's the thickest. It's like a peach nectar in thickness. It's water.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's impossibly salty and fizzy, and it's like, oh my God, all of us were throwing up after.
I was going to
drinking
say warm.
it was foul. But if you drink it, I'll come around to it. If you drink it one glass icy cold, I get it. But it's definitely not for
And
me.
how do you pronounce it again? Say the
Bourjami.
Bourjami. I've been saying Bourjami for God knows how long. And there was a word you said before too, which I was interested in. You sort of had a before it. What's that?
Katsia de Gunaba.
Katsia.
So yeah, they have you have like the K sound. You have a soft one and a hard. There's like a T, a K. You're going to throw me off now. I can't remember them. But you have a soft and a P. You have like a soft version and a hard version. So that's what's kind of confusing. You have to enunciate so that you can to distinguish which letter, because it makes a big difference. Like I was saying, for example, skin is kani. Well, I was saying kani, but it's actually kani. And when I say kani, everyone's looking at me like, what I'm saying. They're like, what the hell is he saying?
Yeah.
What's he saying? And that one
Kani.
little like sound made a huge difference to the language.
God, that must have taken quite a lot to learn as well, eh?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And the worst one is there's this guttural one in the back of your throat, that sound. So like coffee is kava, you know, and you have this like weird sound, and it's kind of, I mean, that's over enunciated. That's not how you would say it in everyday conversation, but that's it. Correctly pronounced.
Amazing. So what's next for Vintners and Vagabonds? Like, what's your sort of like, as far as, you know, having it around? I mean, are you exporting it? Can we get it here in New Zealand?
Yeah, you can't get it in New Zealand, unfortunately, yet. Let's see. But I mean, we've been very fortunate with the business. Like, I started it in 2019, and I made 700 bottles, which all went to export to the US. But in 2022, we made 10,000. So that was on our own so you talked about before with COVID. COVID was kind of a blessing for us because we had the same thing. We couldn't travel. We couldn't do anything. So we reinvested every penny that the business made back into the business to keep growing it. And then because I've worked in natural wine for so long, we know a lot of people around the world. So during COVID, they were like, oh my God, he's now doing wine. And so we export to 11 markets. We've got 11 countries we export to. And I got 3 on the waiting list, which I can't supply yet. And the current importers in 2023 allocations requested 58% more than I physically make. So demand's huge, which is amazing for Georgia and for our little winery. But we just need to keep growing. But I've outgrown my sheds. I have one shed is 16 square meters, and we put a second 12 square meter lean-to next to it. But I have no more land space to make anything bigger. So we don't have any more room for wine. So we'll just have to keep saving and probably do another expansion in 5 years or so.
And tell me, are the local guys now has the mood settled with the Cuivre being above ground?
Yes, very much so. Everything was big questions, and last harvest, everyone was coming for advice and questions. So
isn't that cool?
It was very cute. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's super cute. So we have like everyone comes to check their grape sugars every day. If someone comes knocking on the garage, can we check our sugars, where we're up to and stuff? So it's really cute, and people asking questions.
And given the history of the tradition in that region, you know, in that country, isn't that awesome?
Yeah,
it's
super cute.
Yeah, really cute. Yeah.
Sorry. In terms of selling the wine and it exporting so much of it, are you constantly educating? Because I mean, I'm sitting here and I've worked in wine my whole career and hearing a whole lot of things I've never heard before. You must constantly be educating.
Yeah, so we haven't had a chance to go out and educate until this year, but I mean, it is wine tourism is like a really big thing in Georgia. So everyone we get who comes to visit us at our little winery, we're educating constantly. It's not just like we make the wine like this, you know. It's you have to explain we make it like this, and and what's that, and what's that, and what's that, and what's that, and what's this grape, and what's that grape. So yeah, I think education's a huge part of it. And I think it'll take a while until it's established. You know, I think I look at Greek wine as a great example. Again, this is just relating back to my time in Melbourne. But I remember when it was brought in for the first time, and it was sort of brought in properly, as in, not from like small Greek importers bringing in olive oil, and it was just hot and cooked, but real, like, proper importers. And it's sort of when you had things like Sino Mavro, with an X, which was the classic one, it was like, no one's going to order this because I don't know what it's like in New Zealand, but in Australia, it's a very educated thing. So they don't like looking stupid. And it's probably the same in many countries.
Yeah.
And so you don't want to say it wrong, like Tempranillo still like makes my hairs crawl down the back of my neck. But, this sort of thing. So, and when you have Georgia, you have like Mungaloblishvili, like all these Chikhaveri and all these like complicated things, Mitswivani and Mitswane and things that are like very complicated to read on paper because of all the things. I think there will be a lot of education until it's kind of not the norm, but it's a part of the language of the greater world of wine.
I mean, we've still got a problem with Viognier. I mean, we really do. Like
it's said Viognier.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right.
I also think that's how a lot of them taste as well. Is a huge factor.
Yeah, well,
it's not great.
You're not a fan. I'm sensing some, like anti-Viognier vibes from my right.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
In terms of Georgian culture, has obviously got this real make it yourself kind of attitude or established culture to do. Like what is the sort of wine bar sort of situation over there? What are people drinking in wine bars? Is it just all Georgian or are they getting...
Yeah, so good question. So basically, the wine bar scene is huge because even though everyone has a culture of making themselves, the drinking culture is like a huge part of the culture. So bars are everywhere and there's bars popping up all the time. But I suppose probably like here, like other places, COVID made things pop up and close down very often. But in now post-COVID, like in the last 6 months, I mean, it's like every week's a new bar opening and they're still holding strong, which is great.
Right.
But yeah, it is essentially mostly Georgian. There are a couple of guys who have started trying to import some like international natural wines. I helped one with their portfolio, but they're winemakers, so they don't really have the ability or nous on how to sell as well.
Yeah.
It was just sort of kind of like a great idea, but not
really.
They
get to see wines.
Exactly. It wasn't sort of followed through beautifully. And then there's another winery who brought in some wines as well, but they found it just was really hard to sell because the thing is, when you import them into Georgia, the price is pretty high. And Georgia's a really poor country, people don't have money. And so, even a lot of people in the villages will never buy a bottle of wine. It'll just be trade with your neighbors for something kind of thing or drink your own. Like they won't. It's really a kind of relegated almost strictly to Tbilisi, which is the capital.
Right.
So near us, the capital of the West is called Kutaisi. And that's got a kind of a growing bar scene, but that's literally down to the international airport that's opened, which has like Wizz Air and Pegasus flying. So you can get really cheap flights to Copenhagen, to Milan, to everywhere. So a lot of Europeans are coming there. So that's that, but that's kind of a
micro kind of
and the tourism side.
Yeah.
So tourists come to Georgia to drink Georgian wine. They got no interest in drinking French or Italian wine where they're from. They come here for Georgia.
Yeah.
And that was also when we were talking to this guy who was starting this pretty good portfolio. Most of the stuff was from Le Cave de Perrin. There was that, well, who's going to buy this? Because people coming to Georgia who have the money to buy these wines are coming to Georgia to see Georgian wine, and Georgian winemakers don't have any money, so they're not going to be able to buy this wine. So who is this targeted at? But having said that, there's a really big project which is just about to happen there, which is, if it comes through into its eventuation it's supposed to be, it's going to be a really incredible city to drink in.
Cool.
Yeah, so it's just starting.
And what about just from a point of view of and sort of slightly following on from that? So if you're looking at a wine list and you're looking at all Georgian wines, but the country's only 7 hours to drive from one side to the other, what's the diversity of terroir and stylistic,
it's
climate.
It's huge. It really is.
Isn't there like over 500 indigenous?
525 indigenous varieties.
Someone's been Googling Georgian wine today.
Yeah. Very good. Yeah, exactly.
Nice work, John.
I don't like there's a laptop in front of me. Look at 525 varieties. And where you go from, so Kaheti in the east, it's like hot, dry, old riverbed. It reminded me a lot of Hawke's Bay when we were there in the gravels. Right. It kind of reminded me a lot. They get wild poppies, like the wildflowers that are growing there are the same as Kaheti. It was super interesting to me. So I was saying, is if anyone's ever heard of Georgian varieties like Katsiteli and Saparavi, which in my brain looks incredibly suited to that climate. But anyway, so you have this very hot, arid, dry area in the east. Then you come across to central Georgia, which is where Tbilisi, the capital, is. And then you have an even more arid, but very, you have much higher altitude. So alcohols are lower, acidities are higher, and a completely different varied. Then you have where we are in Imereti, which doesn't make sense in terms of a viticultural side. When you're in wine and you go to this region that feels like Southeast Asia, where we are, it's 38 degrees every day. It's like 95% humidity, yet I produce wines with 9 to 11% alcohol that are as mineral and light, and I'm only 100 meters above sea level, so I haven't even got altitude going for me. Yeah, exactly. So it doesn't make sense. You know, we make Ala Dasturi at 9% alcohol, harvesting in November. That's had a summer that looks like anywhere in Southeast Asia. It's wild. You have that. Then you have Ajara, you have the Black Sea, which is like full tropics, but with coastal influence. Then you have the mountains of Racha and Lechkomi, where you have altitude. So we work up there as well. And that's like almost 800 meters above sea level and just like really rocky limestone. And then you have this really interesting region called Samset Javakheti down the south, which is...
How does that go again?
Yeah, Samset Javakheti. And it's a very interesting region because it's like the most... undeveloped agriculture, like it's just sort of like potatoes and stuff, and that grows out there. It's just, you go and it's just like, it's not desert, but it's just this arid, rocky land. And it did have a huge history of wine growing. And there's now a couple of guys, and including one, Thierry Puzela from, Claude de Boeuf. He's got a winery there, a vineyard there, which he's working with John Wooderman from Pheasant's Tears, because it's an amazing soil down there. So yeah, within one country, you have unbelievably, and that's just the main regions, not delving into sub-region and
one small country,
too much, one tiny country,
which is sort of insane.
Yeah. It's funny. There's this like Georgians love a story, like a lot of people, but there's a really good story. So basically, in Georgia, they say that when God was basically said, to the world that on Monday at midday, for sake of argument, come see me and we'll hand out land to all of the people in the world, and we'll give everyone their countries and their land for life. And so on Sunday, Georgians got together and they had a huge supra. The supra is like the feast, what they call it there, translated to God. And it's what you have, and it's just endless toasts. And so you drink toast. Always, you never drink without a toast. You don't just sit and have a glass of wine. There has to be a reason you drank that glass of wine. So they toasted for God's beauty, the love of God. They toasted for his generosity to give everyone lands. And they toasted and toasted and toasted. And so, of course, they were super hungover and slept in. And so they came on Monday at 4:00. They came on Monday at 4:00. And came there.
They were late.
Exactly. And God was like, what the hell, Georgians? Like I told you, it was midday, you get here and this is your land. And they're like, I'm so sorry. We had a really big day yesterday. We had a super in your honor. We toasted for you. We drank for you, for your beauty, for your love, for your generosity, and da-da-da. And God was so touched.
Oh, they're salespeople.
Exactly. And he said he was so touched. And he said to them, well, I tell you what, I actually am so touched by your story. I did have this little spot tucked away from my retirement. It's the most perfect land that has everything you can imagine. That's completely cultivatable from every drop of thing. It's got sea, it's got mountains, it's got skiing, it's got this, it's got that. I'll give that to you. And so that's Georgia.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
That's the best.
The story alone makes you want to come and visit.
I know, doesn't it though? But also too, I love the fact that they, it's like slightly overindulged. Sorry, we're late. What's left?
Yeah, exactly. We'll just take what's left.
Where are we? Yeah. Where are we? Where do we fit in?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, exactly. I love it. And they were happy that they had nothing, but then they got everything.
So there's clearly a good sense of humour in Georgia too.
Amazing. Yeah.
And tell me, when it comes to food, I know nothing about... what food are they putting with wine?
Yeah, it's an interesting...
Eating with wine.
Yeah, again, I suppose like many places, there's regional things that vary a lot, but it's kind of, because it was obviously through Silk Road, there was a lot of influence from Persia and some other sort of cuisines in there.
Right.
But it's, at its core, it's a lot of dairy, so dairy is a really big part of it.
Right.
You'll have cheese with almost every meal.
Yeah.
The ubiquitous thing is khachapuri, which is this... bread stuffed with cheese, which is like the dish national. Like you have it for every meal.
Can't go wrong.
Bread and cheese. Yeah. But where we are in Imereti, it's a much more vegetable-based diet. In Kaheti in the east, it's really meat heavy, and it kind of reflects the people. Like Tahitians are like big, strong fighters, you know. They're like, whereas in Imereti, everyone's
and are the wines big too?
Like,
is it big?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, everything it's amazing. So big, heavy, rich, powerful meats, heavy alcohol. You know, traditionally 16% alcohol, tannic, amber wines, and stoic people. And then Imereti, low alcohol, high acid, loads of vegetables. Yeah, and so it's like that.
Fascinating.
Yeah. So,
which feels natural, right? I mean, they feel like they're natural. Then that's a natural alignment. I mean, that will have happened. They've happened probably from an environmental point of view, but of course, that's how. I mean, that's what food and wine matching is. Actually, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, there's a reason why Fino Sherry is so fucking good with salami. Or you know, the Spanish like a jambon is what I was probably. Is that what I'm trying to say? Am I saying that right?
And salty fish.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Exactly. That's right. You know, a beautiful tinned sardines or something like that. Yeah. It's a good fault. Hello. It's obviously past dinner time. Yeah. Amazing. And so you're home to see family.
Yes.
And are you sort of doing a bit of a tour? Obviously you've got wife and wee bubba with you.
Yes, wife and 2-year-old.
So are you doing a bit of a sales sort of trip en route, or is it purely family?
It was purely family was the plan. And as I said, I wanted to visit one specific one. There's a friend of mine in Melbourne, a guy called Campbell Burton, who I really have a good love of what he loves about wine. And he only works with one winery from New Zealand, so it piqued my interest. That was Amy and Ollie at Halcyon Days. So I contacted them to be interested to go and visit to see what they were about, to see what he was so enamored with, I guess. And on the back of that, it ended up being a little bit of a Hawke's Bay thing. There's a budding sort of community there. And then really there was a wine festival in Wellington they told me about, so they were all traveling to that. So we went with them for that and had this festival in Wellington. And then we also have one actual wine event, which was there's a restaurateur in Auckland that actually visited my winery last year, and he obviously liked the wines enough. He bought them from Australia and shipped some here. So we're going to do a little pop-up event with him, which will be fantastic.
And that's Rose's dining room.
That's Rose's dining room.
Yeah. Amazing.
On
that's
Friday,
so cool.
23rd, which will be great. Yeah. So I don't know. We offered to go into the kitchen and help the guy because the guy, I forget which winery he's from.
David
15 minutes.
15-minute
bottles. 15-minute bottles.
Yeah.
So he's actually been to
cooking.
Georgia. Yeah. And he's been to Georgia. So we've been in chats. And I've been throwing around some ideas because I bought from Georgia all the spices and oils and stuff you can't get here, and sour plums. And so we have this like larder that we bought for them of really cool stuff because the things that you cannot make Georgian food without. There's like dried marigold and a blue fenugreek and there's oil from cold pressed sunflower seeds and this sour like Georgian ketchup. It's a sour plum sauce, heavily spiced. And so we bought this whole larder, so we're trying to toy with ideas. And I said, I can come help you in the kitchen, but I kind of regret making that offer, so we'll see what happens after that. I'd like to just
might regret it too.
Talk about it. Yeah, exactly.
It's a
small kitchen.
Yeah, I was going to say it's a pretty small spot. He might boot you out. You might end out front whether you like it
That'd
or
be
not.
nice. Yeah, I hope so.
But that sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah. So I've actually got a friend flying over from Melbourne for it, which would be great.
Oh, amazing.
Who I haven't seen since I left 5 years ago. So.
Oh, amazing.
I mean,
I've got to say I'm disappointed that we're not looking at getting your wines here anytime soon, and that we're clearly on a wait list for. Like we're fourth in line by the sound of it.
You can, but in the wait list, you can go up to number one. Don't worry.
Oh yeah,
family.
That's how we roll.
Family and friends. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, not serious community. We need to make sure that we push that. Yeah. And traveling to Georgia, is that something that like is it a? Do you get many Kiwis and Aussies hitting Georgia? It feels
a lot more Aussies than Kiwis, but we do, and it's sort of I guess like Australian, New Zealand communities are pretty tight, especially in like people who like food and wine.
Yeah.
So whenever we hear about it, we do hear about it. So it's like, oh, I know someone who knows someone that's going.
Yeah.
And there's actually a girl in Wellington who does like actual food tours to Georgia. They do like I can't remember the name of the company, but it's in May and September every year.
Oh, that's good to know.
Eating Adventures, maybe I think her name's.
We'll find out. We'll definitely make sure we
so they do
include
it. Yeah, they do something.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's funny because we often get asked because, of course, you know, the war or the second war that's going on, like it has zero impact on our everyday life, even though it's on our neighbours to the north and not far to the northwest.
Yeah.
I mean, the world's always in flux, isn't it? Geopolitical things aside, there's always flux, and as long as it's safe enough to travel, then people should go.
Yeah, exactly. It's amazing. I had friends who were going to come hiking because the hiking is really incredible up in the mountains in the
that
Caucasus.
Tiny little pocket.
In that tiny little pocket. But you've got the Greater Caucasus, going up to the 5,000s. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, of course.
And so they were going to come, and then of course the war started, and then she was panicking. She said, "No, I can't come."
Freaked
I said,
out.
"Trust me, it's like absolutely fine. There's nothing going on here."
Yeah.
But she freaked out, and then she still messaged me almost every month. She's like, "I'm kicking myself that we didn't do it."
Yeah.
Like, I wish I did.
Yeah. So. No, that's right. I mean, when I was a wee nipper, I used to do a lot of different dancing, ballet, and one of the dance styles that I did through to quite a high level was national character dancing. So and it was a really cool dance, really, because part of it was it's literally the national dancers from all over the world. So you'd learn these traditional dances. And part of the exam was you had to choose one of the countries that one of the dances, you'd do like 20 dances in the examination. Maybe that's an exaggeration. You might have done less than that. You had to learn a lot, and then you'd maybe get asked to do, I don't know, maybe 10 or something. And you had to present a project to the examiner of one of the countries that your dance was from. And I do remember doing Georgia at one point there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which was sort of cool. I mean, otherwise I don't know if apart from the...
Can you show us?
Oh my God, Pete. I have not drunk enough wine. Yeah, let's have another night when I've had more than just the two glasses.
Okay,
yeah.
and then we'll see it.
And that happens very rarely these days too, by the way, because it's very hard to get Bourjami in this country. God, how do I say it again?
Bourjami.
Joe, got to think of Bourjami.
Do you know how to do the fight dancing?
I don't know if it was
spinning crazy.
I mean, look, I was probably. I mean, I gave up dancing when I was 15. I'd done it since I was about 6. But I mean, we're talking. I mean, I'm quite a long way away from 15 now, so chances are I have no memory. But I did watch a video when I was doing the article actually for how did we even start drinking alcohol, and that's where I came across the UNESCO stuff. There was a really great video which I was so gutted I couldn't get the right file to share it on the article because I try to include any content to give context. And God, there was a cool video of the traditional dancing, and because the musical instruments and everything too, which define Georgian music and Georgian singing and all that. I mean, the singing was sort of insane. Like, it was absolutely beautiful.
Polyphonic.
Yeah. I mean, it feels like they don't. I mean, it's like they don't take a breath.
Yeah, it's strange, and everyone comes in at different tones.
Yeah.
It's super musical understanding, but there's some. Yeah, it's amazing to hear. It's sort of like kind of chanty, sort of echoey sort of sounds that come in. Everyone has a different level they have to come in at, and it's it's pretty remarkable. But if people break into song like that, like in every restaurant, you'll just see it's not like put on show. People just get emotional at some point, and they just need to sing a song, and they just sitting in a restaurant, and there's like suddenly this like choir going on in the background. It's wild.
Amazing.
That's unreal.
Yeah,
that must have been quite a culture shock when you arrived.
Yeah, because and it's like accepted, and then everyone will get up, and it's like it's everything about it's been a shock, but an amazing shock.
Yeah.
So without I mean, this may not be a question I can ask, but how old were you when you got to Georgia? Like what? Like,
well, I was no problem. I was 38.
Yeah, I mean, see, I'm sorry, but that's pretty outstanding because I think a lot of people around that age are kind of like, right, better settle down.
Yeah, time to settle down.
Done my OE, right? Which, and also too, I think you've reached an age where, consequences are pretty clear, and the idea of doing something that scary is like, Jesus, I could lose everything here. I mean, it's an incredibly courageous thing to have done.
It was a huge gamble, but
were you just kind of slightly crazy?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of one of those things where I look back on like. It's funny, hindsight, when I met my now wife, there was like a side story. So we were at this wine festival, and after the wine festival, like nothing eventuated from this first meeting. And we're at this wine festival. I was actually with 2 bar owners from Melbourne, and it was my birthday, the same day as this festival. And they were like, it's your birthday, we should go to Bassiani. So Bassiani is this like very globally famous nightclub in the heart of Tbilisi, and it's in the swimming pool underneath where the national team used to play. It's this old Soviet stadium, and in the swimming pool underneath,
I bet it looks cool.
Is this it's super cool. So it's in the underground club, pitch black, better sound system that people say than the Bergheim. Like it's really, if you're into music, it's this thing. So we're like, okay, well, let's go. And so we went and we're in the queue out the front, and then as we were standing in the queue, suddenly all these police buses rock up, and it's like guys with riot gears, big, huge shields and helmets, and batons just charge the club, like, break up the queue, and just storm the club. And we're like, whoa, like, what's going on? This is wild. And no one could tell us. We couldn't understand language, and it was crazy. So then we went to another club that we'd heard about. Same thing was happening there. And then there was a third one, same thing. So that was the end of that. And the next day we were up at another wine festival, so a little bit tipsy as we were coming down through the streets. And everyone was running through the streets, young people screaming in language and "Polizia this." And we were like, oh, what's going on? And we stopped someone. They said, last night the government shut down our clubs. So we're going and we're protesting on the steps of Parliament. And we're like, oh, no way. We were in the queue last night. Yeah, we were wondering what was going on. They said, no way, you're in the queue? Come with us and protest. We're like, okay, great idea.
Okay.
Another one of those ideas that seems a great idea. Let's go protesting in a quite volatile geopolitical country on the steps of Parliament with something we had nothing idea about. Yeah, exactly. Hindsight, it was probably not the best idea, but as I was at this thing, but it was, if you look up the videos on YouTube, it's like incredible. You watch this thing. So basically all the DJs from all these clubs basically bought a full sound setup and put on the steps of Parliament.
Oh, no way.
And it was this like giant like rave on the streets on the whole length of Risco
that's
Valley.
how you protest.
And it was unbelievable.
Yeah.
It was just this thing, super, like there was nothing aggressive. And it was just this like giant party on the streets where everyone was just together. It was amazing. And then I just turned around, my wife was behind me. So
that's amazing.
It was pretty cool.
That's serendipitous.
That's a great story.
Yeah, very good story.
So what was the deal? What was the problem with the bars?
So I was basically bad drugs being brought in from Russia, and they had like 11 or 15 deaths. So they basically showed a show of force that,
right.
It's the nightclubs that are doing this problem, and so they shut everything down.
Right.
So it shut down for about a week, and then everything reopened.
Right. So is the pool club, is that back open again?
Yeah.
That's got to be on the must-do.
Yeah, if you look it up online, Bassiani. They now have
Bassiani.
it's pretty wild.
Oh yeah, that sounds amazing. Well, I mean, have you guys got any other questions that you'd like to hit Aidan with?
No.
That was
covered.
a delicious bottle of wine to enjoy
Awesome.
while
Thank you
we
very
chatted, and so interesting to talk to you.
Yeah.
Thank you very, very much.
Yeah.
And
I'm glad I could share it with you.
And I think what needs to happen is everyone who's listening to the podcast and all the Not Serious Wine Chats supporters need to visit your website, and we'll make sure they get to Georgia, and then when they come back they can what's the right word? They can petition the local wine distributors to import
bring some
and
a small amount of
get us up to number one on the wait list and bring some of this in.
No problem.
Because it's absolutely delicious. Absolutely delicious. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Aidan, thanks so much for making the time. It's been
Pleasure.
an absolute treat.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Too easy.
Thanks for being the first in this lovely shop.
Yeah, that's right. Chris
and congratulations, really. Yeah.
Thank you.
Fantastic selection.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, they've done a good job in here, these guys, haven't they? Yeah, it's pretty cool. We're lucky.
You can tell they worked in Melbourne.
Oh, come on, mate. Aotearoa, I can pull it out. These boys are from Hamilton. What are you talking about?
So Hamilton.
There's a natural wine bar in Hamilton.
I know, Amphora. Their mates are theirs.
Ah, really? Yeah, because I saw it open up. I was like, when we were driving through Hamilton, I said, I just got to stop and see this natural wine bar in Hamilton.
Yeah.
Like, I lived here when I was a teenager. Like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah.
But it was closed on a Tuesday, sadly. But anyway.
Yeah.
It is great.
Yeah,
for it.
Yeah, totally.
It's the same person that brings in the Greek wine.
Ah, really?
Yeah, Karen. Yeah.
Ah, there you go.
Yeah.
Same level of curiosity, clearly.
Yes, exactly. Clearly.
absolutely.
Totally. Listen, Aidan, thanks so much. And safe
Pleasure.
travels home. It's a shame you didn't get to meet your wife. What's your wife's name? Ellie. And baby's name?
Saoirse.
Saoirse.
Oh,
beautiful.
name.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah. And big shout out to your little sis. Little sis.
Little sis.
Emily for making sure that she got us connected. Which is really, really cool. Yeah. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks so much for listening to this Not Serious Wine Chat. We hope you enjoyed it. Not Serious Wine Chats is brought to you by Tradecraft with the support of the three amigos behind By the Bottle and those good people at Antipodes Water Company. Thanks everyone for tuning in and for your ongoing support.